A new ceasefire deal between Israel and Lebanon is on the table, a development hailed by some as a potential turning point, by others as a dangerous gamble. At its core, this agreement ties a lasting ceasefire directly to the disarmament of Hezbollah, an organization long considered a state within a state. The world watches with a crucial question: can Hezbollah, a powerful political and military force, be persuaded or compelled to lay down its arms? As diplomatic sources indicate, the proposed terms are unprecedented, demanding a level of compliance rarely seen in the region's volatile history. This deep dive will dissect the hidden clauses, analyze the military realities, and evaluate the strategic chess game unfolding. Central to the new framework, according to drafts reviewed by international observers, is a phased disarmament plan for Hezbollah. This is a significant departure from previous arrangements, which primarily focused on de-escalation and border demarcation. Official statements from negotiating parties, albeit carefully worded, suggest a commitment to establishing Lebanese state sovereignty over all its territory, implicitly targeting Hezbollah's autonomous military presence. The agreement, reportedly brokered through intensive back-channel negotiations involving several major powers, aims to secure a demilitarized zone along the Blue Line, a UN-drawn border established after Israel's withdrawal from Lebanon in 2000. To understand the challenge, one must grasp Hezbollah's military capabilities. Intelligence estimates widely attribute a significant arsenal to the group. According to a 2023 report by the Washington Institute, Hezbollah's missile inventory is estimated to exceed 150,000 rockets, a figure far greater than many state armies. Its sophisticated anti-tank and anti-ship missiles, alongside an expanding drone fleet, represent a credible deterrent. Furthermore, analysts like Dr. Michael Eisenstadt note the group's combat experience, honed in conflicts like the Syrian civil war, where it deployed thousands of fighters. This makes their disarmament a formidable logistical and political undertaking. This is not the first attempt to disarm non-state actors in Lebanon. United Nations Security Council Resolution 1559, passed in 2004, explicitly called for the disarmament of all Lebanese and non-Lebanese militias. It notably paved the way for Syria's withdrawal but utterly failed to disarm Hezbollah. According to UN reports, the resolution was met with outright defiance from the group, which viewed its arms as essential for the resistance. The Lebanese government, politically constrained and lacking the military capacity, proved unwilling or unable to enforce the resolution. This historical precedent casts a long shadow over the current negotiations, highlighting the deep-seated obstacles. The 2006 Lebanon War, ignited by a Hezbollah cross-border raid, ended with UN Resolution 1701. This resolution sought a full cessation of hostilities and called for the no armed groups other than the Lebanese armed forces between the Blue Line and the Litani River. While it established a robust UNIFIL peacekeeping force and significantly reduced direct conflict, it did not achieve Hezbollah's disarmament. Instead, analysts from Chatham House argue that Hezbollah adapted, moving its heavier weaponry north of the Litani River and integrating further into the Lebanese political system. The resolution essentially codified a fragile truce rather than enforcing disarmament, demonstrating the limits of international mandates. Despite official secrecy, fragments of the new agreement's terms have emerged. According to reports from Al Jazeera and diplomatic sources, the deal includes provisions for international oversight of Hezbollah's arms caches, a significant increase in Lebanese armed forces deployment in the south, and a timetable for the withdrawal of certain Hezbollah assets from border areas. Crucially, it also reportedly offers substantial economic incentives to Lebanon, contingent on compliance. However, the precise language regarding Hezbollah's disarmament versus a redeployment or demilitarization remains a highly contested and sensitive point, indicative of the deep distrust that still permeates the negotiations. The exact wording of the disarmament clause is paramount. One version, cited by a Western diplomat familiar with the talks, refers to the cessation of all non-state armed activity and the dismantling of associated infrastructure. This phrasing, while seemingly explicit, could be open to interpretation. Does a dismantling infrastructure include political and social networks, or strictly military? As former UN envoy Tarja Rodlesson noted regarding past resolutions, the devil is always in the details of implementation. Hezbollah, through its media channels, has consistently maintained its right to resistance and has not publicly indicated a willingness for full disarmament, only for tactical adjustments. The Lebanese government, currently in a state of political and economic fragility, faces an immense challenge in enforcing any disarmament agreement. Its own military, the Lebanese Armed Forces (LAF), is often seen as operating alongside, rather than independently of, Hezbollah in certain regions. According to a 2021 assessment by the Carnegie Endowment, the LAF, while professional, lacks the political mandate and superior firepower to confront Hezbollah directly. The government's capacity to assert its authority across the entirety of Lebanese territory, particularly in areas controlled by Hezbollah, remains highly questionable, making implementation of the deal a near impossible feat without external pressure or internal consensus. The political landscape of Lebanon is notoriously complex and deeply divided, exacerbating the disarmament dilemma. The country's sectarian power-sharing system means Hezbollah, as a prominent Shiite political party, wields significant influence in parliament and cabinet. This structural reality makes a state-led disarmament effort fraught with internal conflict. Sunni, Christian, and Druze factions have long called for Hezbollah's disarmament, but fear civil strife. Analysts from the International Crisis Group point to a persistent deadlock where no single faction can impose its will, leading to a perpetual state of compromise that often favors the status quo of armed non-state actors. Hezbollah is not merely a military organization, it's a deeply embedded political party and a social service provider, often more effective than the Lebanese state in areas under its control. It runs hospitals, schools, and welfare programs, creating a broad base of popular support. A 2020 survey by the Lebanese Center for Policy Studies indicated that a significant portion of the Shiite community views Hezbollah's social services as critical. This dual nature complicates any disarmament efforts, as dismantling the military wing could be perceived by its constituents as abandoning their welfare and representation. The organization's strength lies as much in its social contract as in its weaponry. Hezbollah's political influence is undeniable. It holds several seats in the Lebanese parliament and often plays a kingmaker role in government formation. This allows it to block legislation detrimental to its interests and ensure its continued autonomy. For instance, in 2016, following a 29-month political vacuum, Hezbollah's endorsement was crucial for the election of President Michel Aoun. This level of institutional integration makes a top-down disarmament mandate from the Lebanese state highly improbable without Hezbollah's active consent or a fundamental shift in Lebanon's political architecture. Its veto power ensures self-preservation. A critical external factor is Iran. Hezbollah is widely considered a key proxy in Iran's regional foreign policy, receiving financial, military, and ideological support. Estimates from the U.S. State Department suggest Iran provides hundreds of millions of dollars annually to Hezbollah. This patronage provides Hezbollah with an essential lifeline and strategic backing, making any move toward disarmament contingent not just on internal Lebanese dynamics but also on Iran's broader regional calculus. Tehran's willingness to allow its strategic asset to disarm, especially amid escalating tensions with Israel and Saudi Arabia, is highly questionable, complicating any peace efforts. Despite the formidable obstacles, incentives could potentially sway Hezbollah. A major factor is Lebanon's dire economic crisis, with over 80% of the population living below the poverty line, according to UNESCO. International aid and investment, desperately needed, are often conditioned on stability and state sovereignty. Furthermore, Hezbollah might seek to legitimize its political wing and remove the terrorist organization designation it faces internationally, which could unlock funding and diplomatic avenues. The promise of border security and reduced conflict could also appeal to a population weary of war, potentially shifting public opinion in Lebanon. But are these enough? Conversely, the disincentives for Hezbollah to disarm are equally compelling. Its arms are viewed as the primary deterrent against Israeli aggression, a narrative deeply ingrained since the 1980s. Disarmament would remove its raison d'etre as a resistance movement and potentially expose Lebanon to perceived vulnerabilities. Moreover, giving up its weapons would diminish its internal political leverage and status within the region. Regional security analysts argue that Hezbollah leadership fears disarmament would make them vulnerable to both domestic rivals and external enemies, particularly Israel, thereby eroding their self-declared protective role and power base. Even if an agreement is reached, effective monitoring and verification are crucial. Diplomatic sources suggest the deal proposes an expanded role for UNIFIL, potentially with enhanced aerial surveillance capabilities and robust ground patrols. However, Hezbollah has historically restricted access to its strongholds, making independent verification challenging. According to a 2019 report by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, covert weapon transfers and dispersed infrastructure make comprehensive monitoring extremely difficult. Without explicit and guaranteed access, any monitoring mechanism risks being purely symbolic, failing to track true compliance with disarmament clauses. The credibility of the deal relies heavily on international guarantees. Which global powers are truly backing this agreement, and how will they enforce compliance? Reports indicate that the United States, France, and Qatar have played significant mediation roles. Their commitment to ensuring both Israeli and Lebanese adherence, particularly regarding Hezbollah's disarmament, will be paramount. However, the international community's track record in enforcing complex disarmament mandates in volatile regions is mixed, often hampered by geopolitical rivalries and a lack of unified political will. Without teeth, these guarantees might prove hollow. From Israel's perspective, the deal is driven by an imperative for security. The northern border has been a flashpoint for decades, and Hezbollah's arsenal poses a direct and existential threat. According to statements from Israeli Defense Ministry officials, the primary goal is to push Hezbollah's military capabilities beyond range of its northern towns and eliminate the threat of cross-border infiltration. Any agreement that does not substantially reduce Hezbollah's military threat, particularly its precision-guided missiles and offensive capabilities, would likely be deemed insufficient by Jerusalem, rendering the long-term sustainability of the ceasefire highly precarious. The significant economic aid package reportedly included in the deal serves as powerful leverage. Sources close to the negotiations suggest an initial aid commitment of over $2.5 billion from a consortium of international donors, contingent on progress in disarmament and institutional reforms. This influx of capital could be transformative for Lebanon's collapsing economy. However, analysts warn that such aid could also be diverted or fail to trickle down to the population if governance issues are not addressed. Furthermore, Hezbollah's leadership would have to weigh the economic benefits for the nation against the perceived security imperative of retaining its arms. Beyond Israel and Lebanon, this deal reverberates across the entire Middle East. Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states, traditionally wary of Iran's influence, would likely view Hezbollah's disarmament as a significant strategic win. This could foster greater regional stability and potentially pave the way for increased investment and diplomatic engagement in Lebanon. Conversely, a failure could embolden Iran's proxy network and further entrench sectarian divisions. The deal thus becomes a test of competing regional visions, one favoring de-escalation and state sovereignty, the other rooted in resistance and strategic proxy warfare, with implications for all players. The path to disarming Hezbollah is fraught with peril. A breakdown in negotiations, a major security incident, or an internal political upheaval in Lebanon could easily unravel the entire agreement. History shows that such deals in the Middle East are often fragile. Analysts from the European Council on Foreign Relations caution that any perception of Israeli overreach or Lebanese government weakness in implementing the deal could lead to a severe backlash from Hezbollah and its supporters, potentially plunging the region back into renewed conflict. The risks of this gamble are as high as the potential rewards. So, will Hezbollah truly disarm? The evidence suggests that while the economic and political incentives are significant, Hezbollah's core identity as a resistance movement and its strategic ties to Iran present formidable barriers. The new agreement offers a glimmer of hope, but its success hinges on an unprecedented level of political will, international enforcement, and a willingness from Hezbollah to fundamentally alter its nature. Without genuine and verifiable disarmament, this deal risks becoming another fragile truce, merely postponing the inevitable next phase of conflict. The world watches, holding its breath, as the region grapples with this momentous decision.